Look, the thing that stands out to me the most is, how long do you want the pain to last? It really was the turning point in my life because I'd stood up and I'd shared in front of this meeting that I said, I'm confused. Where do I do these steps? When am I supposed to start? It really is the signpost in my recovery. When the gent who's now my sponsor, when he came up to me and he said, my boy, how long do you want the pain to last? It's really as simple as that.
I heard it through the grapevine. Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
And I am Alice, an alcoholic in Oakland, California.
Hiya, Alice.
Hey, Don.
Alice, when was the last time you went to an online meeting?
Yesterday. I do a lot of online meetings. I have a really incredible, robust, spiritually fulfilling online recovery. So I do a Tuesday night meeting. Fellowship of the Spirit does an 11-step speaker series. I'm there every Tuesday. I do the booking and I do the Q&A.
Well, I'll go every Sunday. I have a meeting that I go to with my service sponsor at 8 p.m. We're reading the service manual, studying the concepts. It's wonderful. All those people could not meet if it weren't for being online.
I've got 3 meetings that are part of my standing routine that are online. And there are, I kid you not, about 450 people every Sunday. And they're from all over the world. After all these years since the pandemic has been online and we're about to do hybrid, I'm a little worried because hybrid meetings don't always have a great flow. But, I think that God's everywhere. So God's certainly in online meetings.
Yeah, that's the case. I attend a hybrid meeting. I usually attend in person, but it's been great. When I was sick a while back, I was able to go to the meeting because it was hybrid. And this meeting, it really works. There's a big, giant television screen. And so everybody's on the screen at the front of the room. There's a speaker in the middle of the room. The people that are online are participating just as much as the people in the room. So it can work if you have the technology.
Yeah. There's a meeting out of Washington, D.C. called the Cosmopolitan Group. And like that meeting you described, a huge screen, and you could see everybody.
Well, I'm glad that we have all these options.
Yes, and it's not new. Online meetings are really quite old.
Yeah, the pandemic rocketed us into the future, and it's become really an easy way to catch an AA meeting anytime. Yeah. You can always find one in the meeting guide app, you can sort it by online or in person.
What kind of meeting? Is it a literature meeting? Yeah.
Well, I'll see you online. Wait a minute. I am seeing you online.
Right
we
now.
Record this online. How do you think we do this? With me in Greensboro and you're in Oakland. And our guest today is from Australia.
Yes. Today's guest is Andrew M., and he is from the central coast of New South Wales in Australia. And afterwards, we'll answer a question sent in to the Ask It basket.
But first, the news! The General Service Conference approved the production of the Lavinia magazine in 1995. The Spanish-speaking community has been strengthened by the experience, strength, and hope that the magazine has provided both inside and outside the fellowship. The Pacific region of AA began celebrating the anniversary in 2011. Since then, every July, it has rotated between the areas of the region. There, we emphasize the importance of increasing subscriptions, awareness, and sales of books and calendars, etc., that our beloved Grapevine Lavinia publishes. Southern California Area 5 will host this year's event. The dates are July 25th through 27th, 2025, at the Pacific Palms Resort in the City of Industry, California. More information can be found at aalaviniaregional05.org. That's aalaviniaregional05.org.
Have you heard about our Grapevine book, Forming True Partnerships?
As the chapter on Step 4 in the 12 Steps and 12 Tradition puts it, when we were drinking, many of us had a total inability to form true partnerships with another human being.
This collection of Grapevine stories shows the many ways members use the 12 steps, sponsorship, and the tools of the program to improve and repair their relationships.
It has colorful stories on families, friendship, marriage,
Divorce, dating, romance.
coworkers, sponsorship, and get this, pets.
Forming True Partnerships covers a wide range of experiences from sober alcoholics, all focused on how we form true partnerships with others. Get it now at aagrapevine.org.
My name is Andrew. I'm an alcoholic. I'm from the Central Coast of New South Wales, which is on the eastern coast. It's about an hour north of Sydney. My home group is a group called South Melbourne Daily Reflections, which is an online group. I am nowhere near Melbourne, but I am a very enthusiastic member of this group. It provides me exactly what I need.
Australia is very large. Where's the closest in-person meeting?
The closest in-person meeting for me would be, I could get in my car 7 or 8 minutes down the road. So there's actually no shortage of in-person meetings for me here, but you're right, it's a very large country with a lot of space in between. So the main reason I spend so much time online is because of service. You mentioned before how the pandemic rocketed us into the modern age.
Yes.
It really opened things up for us here with respect to getting our fellowship in touch with itself and in touch with AA from across the world. We have access to all sorts of AA now. As someone passionate about service, I really see this opportunity to put all my efforts into that basket to try and consolidate on what the pandemic gave us.
Your sights have been raised.
Absolutely.
I heard it when I first got sober. My eyes were on my shoes, and then I slowly raised my gaze, and I saw, there's a group here. There's a home group, and I can help here. And then, it raises up higher and higher, and pretty soon this is spread all over the world. I'm glad you've joined us.
Yeah.
Tell us about the moment that you quit drinking and came to AA. What possessed you to do that?
No other option. That's what I needed. I needed to have tried absolutely everything for myself. I'm just one of those people. Incredibly stubborn, incredibly self-sufficient. If it's the solution that I haven't come up with, then how is it possibly going to work? So I just gradually spent my drinking years ticking off all the boxes of trying this and trying that. I am now out of options. I have nowhere to go, no one to speak to, et cetera, et cetera. And I found myself in a hospital bed. To my confusion, in this psych hospital on the Gold Coast, which is, in the most beautiful place in the world. And the psychiatrist, to my confusion, put me in the ward with other addicts. I thought I could at least have some sort of a glamorous mental health problem, if I was bipolar or schizophrenia or something.
Doesn't that doctor know who you are?
Exactly. But that's where she put me. And that was the first real time I was exposed to AA literature. I met a guy in the ward, and he'd been in AA previously. And he bought me one of those little blue version of the big book, which I still have to this day. And he just said, look, just give this a read. And that's what I did, because there was plenty of time in this ward. And I sat down and I read this thing.
You weren't put off by it.
Before I had finished the doctor's opinion, I knew this was what was me. This was me. This is describing me exactly. And then I read Bill's story and the struggle with his ego and the humility he had to actually admit to the struggles he'd had with his ego and the struggles that he'd had with trying to stop drinking and how he was completely powerless. And it just spoke to me in my language. It was perfect. And I was convinced and I was ready to be open to the solution, how it works, etc. I got through We Agnostics. I was a militant atheist. I'd been to the inaugural World Atheist Convention, which was held in Melbourne many years ago. I know the authors. I know the quotes. I know the arguments.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like a professional atheist.
Almost a professional atheist. I was putting myself through university in order to be a philosopher so I could continue the argument, right? But none of those arguments were getting me sober. None of those arguments were getting me any sorts of semblance of peace of mind or serenity or well-being. And that's what I was after. I'm not discrediting those arguments. All I'm saying is, for me, it's not the pathway for me to be a useful person in this world. What came in the doctor's opinion and in Bill's story prepared me to have that insight. From that point in time, everything changed. My mind completely opened to being useful rather than being correct.
The arguments that the Big Book lays out in We Agnostics is really targeting people like you. For instance, you don't need to understand it to use it. We use electricity without understanding it. Like, how did those arguments work for you?
I tell you what, Alice, that's very funny that you brought up the electricity example, because as you can imagine, as I'm reading this text, my mind is wrestling with itself, because I've had 39 years of operating one way, and now my mind is just starting to open it. And I hit the portion about not needing to understand it, to take it on and have it to work for me. And I hit the electricity portion. I thought, but hang on, this was read a long time ago, and I have a degree in physical chemistry. I know how electricity works. But fortunately, what came before for me, hang on, this is exactly the problem that my mind keeps doing, which is dismissing things. It's that contempt prior to investigation stuff, which I've since learned. It did feel like it was targeted towards me. There are numerous arguments in We Agnostics about not needing to understand what's going on in order to give it a try. Yeah. But I had already rehearsed and understood all the counter-arguments to all the arguments in We Agnostics. I mean, being in the position that I was in, reading the books that I was in, I'd come across all these arguments before, but I saw them in a new way. And I was willing to see that the authors making these arguments weren't to try and correct me. They were arguing to try and help me.
Mm-hmm. So you surrendered intellectually. How did you manage to keep from drinking?
Well, that was the first step, because I was able to go, hang on, I don't have this figured out. The problem isn't with the world and everything conspiring to keep me drunk. My mind was opening. So when I went back to the next AA meeting, it was a completely different experience. Mm-hmm. So I was still suffering. I still wanted to drink. But I understand what people were trying to tell me. When they were talking about the steps, I now understood what they were for. It wasn't a program of indoctrination. It was a way to get me to see all sorts of aspects of myself and to realize, really come to terms with my powerlessness, really convinced me that despite that, there is a solution, which I couldn't see before. And that solution isn't me. It's got nothing to do with me. All I have to do is follow a simple set of steps and prescriptions, which so many people have done before me. I'm just one among many. And it's exactly what I did when I left the hospital. I sought out a sponsor. But I was confused, so I held off for a while, for 6 months actually, and I was starting to suffer again. I had surrendered, my mind was open, but I was doing nothing else. Yeah. And I spoke at a meeting, and a bloke who's now my sponsor, he's an old South African gent who did it, the Big Book way in South Africa. And I'm not going to try and emulate his accent.
We won't be able to tell the difference anyway.
No, but someone will still find me and tell me about it. So I said to him, mate, I'm confused. When am I supposed to do these steps? And he said, my boy, how long do you want the suffering to last?
That's right. Great question. Once you said, I wanted to stop, did you immediately launch into the work, and did you do it by reading the Big Book?
I did it as prescribed. And I'd heard enough of how people did that. It's the same story. We sat down with the Big Book.
There's a lot of different ways of working the steps. Even within AA, there's different approaches that different people take. Ultimately, for me, it was like finding a sponsor. I'm just going to do it the way that you tell me to do it.
That's it.
And I really appreciate that proceeding part, which is I'm willing, but you guys are confusing me about when do I do this? And I've heard all kinds of things like, a step a year. Why? But one of the best things I've ever heard anybody say, Andrew, is do the steps when you're done with suffering.
Yeah, it's simple.
Yeah.
So give us an example of a wall that you ran up against and then found that once you burst through it and did what was asked, you got results.
So if I ease up on doing a bit of a prayer and a meditation in the morning, reminding myself that my purpose isn't self-gratification or even the removal of my own suffering. That is the end result of the work I do, right? When I start to suffer again, which I do, I realize that there's some aspect of that work, that prescription, that I'm not taking properly.
Yeah.
I may not know what that is, but I have a sponsor who's been through the same thing that I have, and I have a fellowship who've also been through the same thing. So I can go to someone and saying, I'm suffering and I don't know why. Can you help me figure out what part of this program I'm not doing properly?
I really love that you talked about how the problem is always not what's happening outside, but my response, my reaction. And when we opened, you talked about your online group. How did you choose that group, and what is it about that group that drew you in?
I'll tell you what, Alice, this goes back to a thing that you said, God is everywhere. I got sober initially. It was just as the pandemic hit, and so Australia closed down as well. But we're a vast country. So when we closed down, there's a big distance.
Yeah.
We went online quick. I was a member of a home group there called Gympie Goldfields, which was supposed to be a face-to-face.
What? Say that again?
Goldfields?
Gympie Goldfields. Yep. Gympie is in Queensland, and it's an old gold mining town. And so this group was to be called Gympie Goldfields. It was the week it was due to have its first meeting was the week our country got locked down.
Wow.
And so, but we still wanted to have it. So we scrambled and we discovered this Zoom thing and we got it going. And it became a really successful home group. So I got really familiar with doing service online.
Mm-hmm.
Does this thing work? What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing something in face-to-face? My sobriety progressed. My peace of mind still progressed at the same rate because I was still doing the work. Yeah. Then something else occurred to me. The people that are coming to my home group are from people who can't even get to face-to-face meetings, even when there's no pandemic. There are people in this country that live in places where it is impossible for them to go. There were members who were no longer able to leave the house because of disability, because they had caring responsibilities, because they were pregnant even, or they had a newborn. These people, before the pandemic, really struggled to have access to AA. And I just saw this whole new cohort of alcoholics that were suffering in exactly the same way that I understood, that now said, hang on, there's something for me as well. And so that's where I decided to throw all my service efforts. The parameters for a home group were not which one is local, it was which one can I serve best.
Wow.
It's not about geography.
Not at all. It is just everywhere. And I connect. I'm connecting with you guys.
Yeah. But one of the things that is hard for online groups is that contributions, it was hard to determine exactly where to send them geographically. How are we connected to the district? I mean, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. Is this home group in the district for Greensboro, North Carolina, or is it there were a bunch of people in Wilmington? It wasn't a geographical location. And I understand you're dealing with that?
We are, yeah. That Gympie Goldfields group I told you about, and then as the GSR from an online group, I actually went down the road to the district meeting, which was local to us. It didn't really align with the service potential that we had. So there is something a little bit disjointed with the way an online group can serve the fellowship as a whole. But fortunately for us, what happened in Australia was a pretty prescient member submitted a topic for conference asking the fellowship to consider the provisions to create a virtual area. And that was passed. An interested group can submit an application to have a virtual area join a service structure, which I did. I believe 2021 was the first time a delegate from a virtual area was sitting at our general service conference. It moved fast.
Australia has a different general service conference than the U.S.-Canada.
Yes.
We don't have that. I believe that was brought up. It's my understanding it's up to the areas whether to have a virtual district when we don't have a virtual area. It sounds like an interesting setup you have there, Andrew. What's the pros and cons of it?
It's general service, so, nothing in general service is a smooth ride, but there's the broad spectrum of opinions and justifications. Each one has its merit, right? But the fact that the conference, which truly does speak for the fellowship of AA in Australia, I'm the second delegate of the virtual area, so I'm in my last year as delegate. My experience at conference has been great.
Do you attend virtually or in person?
That's the thing. My joke when I go there is nice to meet you all for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
no, I don't attend virtually. I go.
Yeah, so you're representing the virtual area.
I'm serving the virtual area. I'm very careful about saying representing because it's a bit parochial. I mean, even from GSRs all the way through, as trusted servants in the general service structure, we serve AA as a whole. We don't represent.
Point taken, yes.
And another line that I like to use as a reminder, because I forget about it sometimes, is that the area isn't there to serve the groups. The area is the avenue by which the groups can serve AA as a whole. It's a very different thing entirely, and it changes the types of decisions and discussions you have at area level and at group. And the other thing I like to remind myself as a delegate is I don't represent the virtual groups, and the groups are not served by the virtual area. The virtual area there because it's the avenue by which the groups have the opportunity to serve AA as a whole, and I carry just that corner of the group conscience. And I'm try and make my decisions to the best of my ability to serve AA as a whole. It's difficult to do. I love online AA. It's so tempting to make a decision which might favour the online world, but I can't do that. And so that requires a lot of humility, which doesn't come naturally. So I have a service sponsor, I have a sponsor, I have the people on my committee, I have the GSRs that I'm accountable to, This service structure is set up so that if there's no real wiggle room that way.
Well, that is fascinating.
Yeah. It's been really, I think, a very thought-provoking conversation. So now
it's time for A Newcomer Asks.
We received this letter from Patrick M. in Vancouver, British Columbia, where we will be next month for the international conference, Don.
All right.
He sent us a bunch of great newcomer questions for Ask It Basket.
Alice, in his email, Patrick writes, looking forward to hearing the other questions people send your way. Me too, but we need some more newcomer questions, folks. Take a moment to write down a few and send them in. Maybe you and a few friends can brainstorm a few that you had when you came in or questions that you've been asked. If you're new, we want to hear from you too. Send your questions to podcast@aagrapevine.org.
Okay, here it is. A newcomer asked to their sponsor, is AA like your whole life?
Oh, I'm going to throw this right over to Andrew, who's a delegate.
Geez, it seems like it sometimes, doesn't it? But I know what the question means. Yes and no, if you know what I mean. So it is everything, but it allows for everything. I don't want to become too poetic here. Look, it has to be for me. At least I have to be careful to make the distinction between AA as an institution and the spiritual program that's been given to me through AA. They're very different things. And when I refer to AA, I'm really speaking about that spiritual program of action which has delivered me from the suffering which makes me useless to everybody. Yeah. So yes, that is absolutely my entire life. But I can't make the mistake of making AA my entire life, because I participate in AA and I serve AA, but I also have to be a useful member of society. I have a partner, I have a daughter, and I've got a job, and I have friends outside of AA. I'm deeply passionate about my football team. Don't get me started. We could do a 3-hour podcast. We are currently the reigning premiers, and it's an immaculate thing. So, no, AA as an institution is not my whole life, but the program that has been delivered to me through AA is the foundation for everything that I do.
I really appreciate the distinction between the institution Alcoholics Anonymous and the spiritual program of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I recently had an exchange with a friend and said, AA is the foundation of my life, but it's not a cage. The book itself encourages me to see where, for instance, religious people are right, to pursue this evolving conception of a power greater than me. And so it doesn't confine me. It simply gives me the tools that I need to go out in the world and be a great citizen of the world.
Bill says at one point that we want to get back into the mainstream of life.
Absolutely.
In the big book. When I came in, I was like thinking that you go to a meeting every day. Isn't that a little bit obsessive?
Oh, yeah.
But I found that when I went to a meeting, I felt better. And they don't sell any alcohol in the meeting, so it was also safe. So I found that I needed to go every day. And for a period of time, I went twice a day. But eventually, I was going to a noon meeting and spending a half an hour before the meeting and a half an hour after the meeting hanging out. So 2 hours every day. And I realized at one point after about my third year, I'm actually avoiding going to work here. That's what I'm doing. Because I also went to meetings at night. I had to take a look at that and weigh. I've got to take a look at all of that and see what are my responsibilities to my family? What are my responsibilities to my work? What are my responsibilities to staying sober? It's absolutely true. If I don't stay sober, I lose all those other things. So that has to take priority, but it doesn't have to be an obsession to where I'm hiding out from the world in AA.
Yeah, it's difficult terrain, isn't it? It's not easy to navigate. That decision is hard. How many meetings do I need? Am I leaning too heavily in these meetings?
Yep.
I can procrastinate by going to meetings like the best of them.
Yep.
I'm not feeling the best. I should probably go to a meeting as opposed to I should probably figure out how to help someone else. If I take the spiritual program of action seriously, I'm actually going to meetings to try and find a way to be helpful, to be of service. Having had a spiritual awakening, I don't go back to meetings to try and feel better again. What can I bring to the meeting? Does the meeting even need me there? Am I going to bring something that's not already there?
What a joy to meet you. I don't know if you will be in Vancouver, but if by chance you are there, I certainly hope that we get to meet you in person.
It's international, Andrew.
I know. It's
also a long way from Australia.
It is.
Well, Andrew, this has been a joy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've had a lot of fun.
Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the Grapevine magazine in print or in the AA Grapevine app. Your support makes this podcast possible. Howls emerged from the baby carriage as the young father pushed it through the park.
Please, Ernest, control yourself. Easy does it, Ernest. Keep calm. Simmer down now.
A woman who had been watching this performance stepped to the father.
Congratulations. You know how to speak to infants, calmly and gently. So the little fellow's name is Ernest, is it?
No, lady. His name is George. I'm Ernest.
It's really not that funny.
Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half-Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org, including our app and how to get in touch with us. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to know more about AA, visit aa.org or search online for Alcoholics Anonymous and your city.